This one's for the nerds. If you guys don't know me, my name is Larry Chen. I'm a car culture and automotive photographer. I've been shooting cars and car culture all over the world for over 20 years. Just in the past couple of years, I've been getting reminded more and more about why I got into this world in the first place. It started with a love for cars, specifically a love for driving. And all those years ago, I quit high performance driving just to focus on photography. I waited all this time, I would say about 17 years, until I started getting back into driving, getting back in the driver's seat. And I'm so glad I did. The thing that I've been saying a lot recently is that I'm tired of watching everyone else have fun. I wanted to have fun myself. So I went out of my way to build a drift car so I can learn how to drift. I can learn more about car control. I built a high-speed camera car, my Mark V Toyota Supra. I use that to film drifting at speed. Like no slowing down, no sandbagging, go as fast as you can, and I'm gonna do my best to film it. I also built a time attack car. That's my Toyota GR86 that's sitting behind me. I built that for the Toyota booth in 2022 for the SEMA show. At the time, I was thinking maybe I would use it as a streetable drift car, but after driving it more and more, I realized that it's just such a good driver's car. Fast forward a lot of track days and a lot of tires burned, I really want to take my driving to the next level. So I reached out to some folks that I already knew in NASA, and I wanted to know what the next step was. They suggested that I go for their competition license, which will allow me to race wheel to wheel. And then with that NASA license, I can pretty much apply for a lot of other licenses through other sanctioning bodies like SCCA, Porsche, Club, BMW, CCA, so on and so forth. My goal with this video is just to walk you guys through my experience, just to give you, I wouldn't say really an edge or insight. I just want to tell you how it went for me, because the main thing I want to do is to inspire you guys to hopefully go out for your own license, whether it be through NASA or SCCA or so many other incredible racing schools all over the US and all over the world. When I first reached out to my friends from NASA, I was just so confused. You know, I've been shooting this type of culture from the outside for so long, I never knew how to get into it until now. Traditionally, to get accepted into NASA competition school, you have to go through their HPD program, which means you have to go to many different track days and they have to see you develop your skill, and they have to make sure that you're not a danger to yourself or anyone else on track. And then a lot of people go from doing time attack or time trials in NASA to wheel-to-wheel racing. That way they can vouch for you. That way they can vouch that you have car control and you have a sense around the racetrack. I just asked if I could at least try, because I've been driving for a long time, but I never applied myself to get anything like this. So I signed up for the competition school that was held at Big Willow this past weekend. At Willow Springs. It's a track that I've only driven one time before, and it's a very, very intimidating high-speed track. They call it the fastest road in the West, and it pretty much truly is, because that turn 8, turn 9 section is treacherous. It's something else. You have to really have so much commitment on this track to get the most time out of it. The school itself was 2 days, and I'll run you through the experiences that I had. The goal of the NASA competition school is to put you through a mock race weekend and also get you to be in a lot of these situations that these racers potentially could be in. The number one thing is making sure that you're safe and that you race safely and you follow the rules and you know your flags and all of that. Before we attended the class, we were told that we would have to memorize and learn the NASA rulebook, which is 112 pages, and it is packed full of so much information about everything. HPDE, about roll cage stuff, about time attack, about everything. Anything and everything to do with driving with NASA. There's just so much to learn. And when I first got there, I was pretty disappointed in myself. I did read through it one time, but to retain all this knowledge, it's just so much. I realized that I was just not that prepared. I should have read it over and over and over until I could recite a lot of this stuff. Specifically, the flags, there's just so many little nuances with what you can and can't do. Etiquette, proper driving etiquette, passing. There's just so much. I just knew I wasn't prepared and I knew I should have studied more. First exercise on track was doing a warm-up. And this is kind of when I realized that it's the real deal. I got super nervous. We all went out on track and it was pouring. It was raining. It was honestly the worst conditions for a rear-wheel drive force induction car. And I was just nervous. I didn't want to spin out. A couple of the guys did end up spinning out in the class. And of course, they got a lot of, I wouldn't say they got a lot of flack, but they were the butt of a couple jokes throughout the weekend. From spinning out your first session, I just did not want to do that. I had brand new Yokohama Tire AO52s to break in. I took it pretty easy at first, and what I did was I just kind of stuck to the group. It was all 9 of us, and we all just got onto the track together. And what we didn't realize was that the instructors were going to jump into their own race cars and join us. What they wanted to do was to test us, observe us from the outside, and maybe mess with us a little bit on track. I took it as an opportunity to familiarize myself with the track because I've only driven it one time. And I also took the opportunity to familiarize myself with the new tires, the new halo seat that I had, and the new seating position. There's just a couple of things that I probably should have tried out at another track day before this competition school. But of course, I didn't have the time to do so. So it was just my time to warm up and kind of relearn the car. So then, in my eyes, it was fine to just stick with the group and try to maybe weave in and out of traffic a little bit and play with some of the other cars that were there, just to not really push my car or push how much traction I had. Since it was pouring, I had the wipers on full speed. I noticed, however, the instructors would just get closer and closer to us, and they would just slow down in front of us and see if we would pass them, or they would weave in and out of us. There was just so much going on. It was so chaotic. I got really nervous. And when we came in afterwards, they just laid into us. The instructors were asking us, why the heck were we all bunched up together? Because this is supposed to be a mock race weekend. And when you go out to warm up your car, warm up your tires, warm yourself up mentally, there's no reason for you to be racing during practice with all of these other individuals. There's no point for all 9 of us just to be clumped together. And they thought it would be funny to try to see if they could squeeze us together even closer. So the instructor in front essentially came to a stop, and the instructor behind us would just push us to get closer and closer and closer and closer. Pretty soon, all 9 of us were just fitting in this one corner, and we're all okay with that. What they did was they wasted our warm-up. They forced us to do something we didn't want to do. And the right thing to do would have been to just pull off the track onto the hot pits and then clear up some space and then go out with a clear track. That way you can properly drive at speed, properly warm up your tires, all of that. We messed up so bad, and we were kind of all red in the face after that. And that pretty much set the precedent for the rest of the day for me, because I was already really nervous going into this. I've just never done anything like this before. I've always loved driving fast, and I've always loved competing, whether it be in autocross or in time attack, but I've never done this kind of wheel-to-wheel racing before. I've done a couple invited events over the years, nothing where there's something on the line. I really wanted to pass because I really want to have the opportunity to get into wheel-to-wheel racing. After the warm-up, the instructors asked us how we did 1 to 5. And I rated myself a 2 because I was so nervous about driving on track. I missed the checkered flag for the last lap. And I know my friends at Grid Life are laughing at me watching this because I've been known to be just so focused on what I'm doing on track, I missed the checkered flag. So I always have to go around one more time. It's not like I'm doing it on purpose. I just am so focused and I'm just not paying attention, and I need to pay attention more. And that's one of the things I'm learning about. But I did miss the checkered flag, so I did have to do like a parade lap. And I was beating myself up. I was so upset because I was thinking, oh my God, first session out, I already failed. So I did my parade lap, I got in, and I was honest about it, and I talked about it in class. I definitely deserved all of the jokes from that session. No problem, I'll take it, and it was a good learning experience. Now, every time I pass the front straightaway, I'm gonna look at the crow's nest, and I'm gonna see if there's a checkered flag there, and if there is, I'm gonna pull in right away. Let's talk about the cars. So if you can pass HPDE Tech, then you can use your car for this racing school. You don't need roll cage, you don't need racing seats, racing harnesses, or any of that stuff. If you just had a pretty much stock vehicle with safety gear, you have to have a helmet, you have to have a head and neck restraint, or at least highly suggested. You have to have fire suit and just protection for yourself, just in case something happens. It was such a wide variety of cars with different horsepowers. The fastest vehicle out of the bunch was a Porsche Cayman GT4 that looked pretty prepped. It had great brakes, it had good tires, and the car naturally has 415 horsepower. So there was a couple other cars. There was a Volkswagen Golf R. There was a bunch of Miatas. There was a GR Corolla, which was really cool to run neck and neck sometimes. Power-wise, my GR86, we dynoed it at the track that day, and it makes 271 horsepower to the wheels. So it's pretty similar to the GR Corolla. So especially when we were on the straightaway, they ran pretty close, neck and neck. There was a spec E46, and then of course there was me in the Toyota GR86. It's important to have the right safety gear because the whole weekend we were doing real wheel-to-wheel exercises. We were driving inches away from each other, and that leads us to the next exercise that we did. The instructor told us to pair up into sets of 3. Our goal was to drive around the entire race course side by side. And we would try our best to keep 12 inches apart from side mirror to mirror. And it was so hard. What an exercise. I feel comfortable driving close to other people all the time. But the problem is, especially if you're just right next to them, it's really hard to see because it's kind of just something that you have to pay attention to out of the corner of your eye, because you also have to see where the track is going. Because if you just watch the car next to you, you're not going to be able to see where the track's going, and then you could potentially go off. Or worse, you could hit somebody. And if you do have body contact, it's pretty much an automatic fail. So it was very nerve-wracking, and it's something that we did for 2 track sessions. And the instructors pushed us to be closer and closer, and also they pushed us to go faster and faster. The trick was that whoever was in the middle would set the pace and would set the line for the other 2 vehicles, because wherever the person in the middle is driving, then the other individuals would mimic it. So then when I was in the middle, it was the easiest position. Once you get to the inside or the outside of the track, it got really difficult, because if the person in the middle wasn't paying attention, you could get pinched off and you could get pushed off 2 tires. And the instructor did tell us that some people have even spun out from this exercise or made body contact, which unfortunately means that they potentially failed. Every single lap we passed the front straightaway, we would switch. The person on the left would move over, and then that way everyone would get practice at different portions of the track. My group was the Porsche GT4, and it was also the Spec E46 BMW. And they were pretty similar in terms of size, so it helped. I did catch myself cheating quite a bit in that I would let the middle car go just a little, like a hair in front of me, so I can kind of keep an eye on the corner of the vehicle. The last thing I wanted to do was hit the vehicle and fail. During the first day, one of our instructors, Steven, had a race. So when he wasn't instructing, he was on track, and we watched this guy wheel his BMW from last place all the way to almost first place. When I say almost, I mean he almost passed first place on the last corner, but unfortunately the yellow flag came out and he couldn't do so. But it would have been so cool to see him go from last place to first place, because I think he didn't even qualify. I think he just entered the race, and it was a standing start. And yeah, he's just an absolute wheelman. Really great guy, very, very smart, great instructor, and very knowledgeable. The race that we had a chance to watch taught us a lot about mixed class racing. I can't even guess how many cars there were out there. If I had to make an educated guess, I would say 65, maybe 70 cars were out there. It was a lot of cars, and the variance of speed was insane. You had Spec Miatas, you had Spec E46, you had these, I don't know, it could have been GT4 or GT3 cars. There was like a NASCAR looking thing out there. The Rush open wheel cars were out there. There were just so many different types of cars. I think some of the Hondas were even out there. It was just so cool to see. They did like a start where it's 3 different starts and multiple classes in each start. The race itself wasn't too long. We learned so much from watching these racers from a different mindset. Just picturing us being in their position really changed the way I looked at racing for the first time ever. After watching the race, we got into the classroom and we were told to have a meeting with every single person on grid. This is something that I've talked about, unfortunately, a couple times in my videos, but racing is inherently dangerous, and there was a major accident in that race that we watched, and unfortunately, there was a fatality. And there's really no easy way to put it. I don't know anything else beyond that. That's all I know, and I just know that the rest of the day was canceled. We did have just a little more classroom time just to get ahead of curriculum for the next day, but we just called it a day. And honestly, I was just in such mental shock, and I was just not really mentally prepared to do any more learning anyways, or get back into my car. So we call it a day. It's honestly the worst part of racing, and out of respect for the individual and the family and NASA, I'm just not going to say any more than that, and that's it. That night I spent a lot of time hitting the books. I must have read this 3 times back to back to try to get as much information as possible to try to remember a lot of it, because it's one thing to read it once and then I kind of know what the flags do and I kind of know some of the rules. It's really hard to absorb it just from reading it one time. So when I kept going over and over all of the important sections, that's when things finally stuck. And it's really important because there is a 1 hour test that you have to take that is open book, but the caveat is that you have to get 100% on the test in order to get your license. So it's really important to know everything in this book. Second warm-up went really well. I was thinking maybe I should just do 1 lap and pull in and wait for traffic, and once I have a clear path, I could just focus on myself and try to get a clean lap. It was dry, so I felt a lot more confident in the car. I realized that we were spread out pretty good already, so then I just kind of drove my way through traffic to get myself more familiar with passing, and also just trying to push a little more and a little more. I still wasn't pushing 10 tenths. I was maybe driving 7.5, 8 tenths. But it's more than enough to warm up the car, get myself mentally ready for the rest of the day. The second day was so much more intense in terms of exercises and in terms of what we learned and what they put us through. We did the door-to-door exercise 1 more time, which allowed us to go even faster. So the first day we were going about 55 to 65 miles an hour around the track the entire way 3 wide. And the next day we tried to go from 65 to 85, almost 90 miles an hour on the front straights. And we would slow down a little bit for the Omega turns like 3, 4, 5 area, which allowed us to stay in formation. But man, I gotta tell you, it was so difficult to maintain that proximity, especially when you're going that much faster. There were multiple times where I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna hit this guy. But it worked out. I didn't hit anybody. In fact, nobody hit anybody throughout the whole weekend in the entire class, which is so cool. Like, we were all really dedicated and we really wanted to pass this class. The next exercise was so much fun. It's something that I've never done before. We practiced race starts, and we practiced them back to back to back to back. So all 9 of us would follow the pace car around the last 2 corners, and as soon as the pace car pulled off, the starter would kind of mess with us. He would wait a certain time until we're almost through the whole straightaway, or he would just drop the green flag right away as soon as we rounded the corner, just to give us some variance. But let me tell you, I cannot believe how much fun it was. Of course, I just had to be careful not to hit anybody, but one of the main things that I realized that you learn when you're following this rule book and when you're driving with other people is that you have to trust them. And there's an order of operations in terms of when you can pass, how you can pass, how you can let people go by. There's just so many little nuances that I won't get into this video. If you want to see the NASA rulebook for yourself, go ahead and download it, and you can print it out, you can read it, you can go through it. But it's just everything. Everything is important, and it feels like anything that I do wrong can fail me for the weekend. And so there was just so much to keep in mind, and I kept that in mind every time we started. And it was just so much fun because when we started, they let us race maybe half of the course or a little more than half of the course. So me, the GR Corolla, the Golf R, and the GT4, along with Dennis, the instructor in his FL5 Honda Civic Type R, we would all mess with each other. And we would all pull away from the Miatas. Sorry, Miatas. We would pull away from the Miatas and we would just battle it out through the corners, let each other pass. You know, if there was an opening, I would go for the pass on the inside or outside. And it was my first time really thinking about it, thinking about passing. Before, when I would drive HPD, when I would drive with other people, there wasn't like a set rule or communication or a trust there. Like if I was passing somebody, they would tell me to pass, or they would point me by, or there was such a variance of speed, I would just pass them. But when you're doing this wheel-to-wheel practice, there's just so much that everybody agrees to, right? One of the simple things is if you have your front wheel to the individual's door, that means you can see who is trying to pass you. If you're there, you have a right to go through and you have a right to pass. There's just so many little nuances, so many different scenarios that the instructors put us through that I can't remember all of them. It's just so much to take in. And I almost wish I recorded the whole thing so I can play it back. But I think a lot of this stuff comes through experience of them racing over 15 years or more than that. And I think once I start doing wheel-to-wheel racing, I'll learn a lot of that on my own. I know for a fact, once I do start wheel-to-wheel racing, I will be a little more cautious, especially because I have to have 4 clean races to earn my full license. Right now, it's just a provisional license. Once I have 4 clean races, which means no contact with anybody else, that's when I'll have a full license. And then that's when, I wouldn't say I can drive a little more risky, but I can try to drive to my best ability. The last exercise was the most fun. It was a mock race. So we lined up and the instructor gave us the opportunity to go where we wanted on grid. I chose to go last because I wanted to work my way through traffic and I just wanted a little more practice with more cars around me. It would have been not so much fun if I was just in pole position. So we lined up, I was last, came around the last corner, pace car went out, green flag dropped, and I just gunned it. I was in second gear, I let the RPMs go all the way to red line, shifted to third, pretty much passed all the Miatas, unfortunately, right away. And then one of the instructors, Dennis, had his Mustang ST4 race car out on track, and he just joined us for the fun. It was him, me, the Porsche, the GR, the Golf. We were just battling out, and I was letting people pass me, I was passing people, and we were just having such a good time. There was no point to push it at all because this was a practice race and they were testing us in the best way possible, putting us through these scenarios, how we would follow the rules and how we would follow the flags to a T. Because if you make a major mistake, there's no reason for them to not fail you. If you're passing under yellow, or if you're ignoring a red flag, or I don't know, just causing an accident or whatever, then your weekend is over. There's just no point for you to be there. You gotta just be safe and you gotta drive within your limits, but still very fast. After a couple laps, I would say maybe 12, 13 minutes into the 20-minute session, things were good. That's when things started getting tricky. They started sending fire trucks onto the track. They started throwing different flags, weird flags. The corner workers were essentially trying to trick us. They would raise their chair instead of a flag, or they would have flags that were not really flying, but like half flying. They would see if we were following them to the T. There was one point when they had a flag out for emergency vehicle and yellow flag, and then they would skip a station, and then the next station would have the same flag, and so on and so forth. And it was just so hard to read, but they were really pushing us to see if we would follow all the flags. At one point, they red flagged the whole session, and then they black flagged the whole session. There's just so many different scenarios where they just wanted to see if we would remember what to do or if we would make a mistake. And I really definitely appreciated that. I'm not going to tell you guys all the tricks that they pulled on us. I'll just tell you one. They pulled so many tricks that really speaks to all the teaching moments, and I'm never going to forget a lot of these things. But Dennis in the Mustang, a lot of times when it was a double yellow flag, full course yellow, he would try to trick us and get us to pass him. And of course, you're not allowed to pass under a full course caution. So when he realized that he couldn't get somebody to pass him, he kind of just gave us a thumbs up, like, okay, we passed the test. But he tried that to me, and I did not pass him. I was like, no, you're not going to get me. You're not going to fail me this way. It's kind of insane to me how detailed the instructors get into this class. There's really no incentive for them to do so other than to spread the love of car culture, of racing. And I say that because the instructors get paid a big fat zero. They get paid nothing to teach these classes. The only thing they get is either reduced fees for races or they get a free race. They mainly want to do this to get the next generation of racers ready for wheel-to-wheel racing and in the safest way possible. I can't tell you how detailed they got in terms of what they were teaching us. Like, they're not supposed to teach us racecraft, but they're talking about budgeting, they're talking about health, they're talking about just everything, everything related to racing, from you getting to the track, to interacting with the people at the track, to your race car, to protests, to cheating, this, that. There's just so much that I didn't realize was so important. Everything is important. You can't miss anything. And it's really easy to forget that all of this is for fun, because NASA club racing, most of the people there are not professionals. Most of the people there are amateurs, and most of the people there just to fulfill their race car dreams and enjoy cars in this way. And I absolutely love it. I cannot believe that I waited this long to do this, but I'm glad I'm finally taking this step to do this, and I'm really looking forward to taking this deep dive into this part of car culture that I wasn't a part of for so long. Definitely wanted to thank my friend Chris Cabetto and Ryan Flaherty from NASA for recommending me to do comp school. It was so much fun. I'm so glad I passed. I've heard a lot of people tell me that a lot of individuals don't pass the first time, and I can totally see why, because it's very intimidating. It's something that you really have to put your heart to, and it really opened my eyes to how serious this is and how serious you have to take this rule book, because safety is on the line. And if you do this properly, it is so much fun. It is so cool to be part of an organization like this. I'm just so glad something like NASA exists in the US.